Like, not American enough for America, you're not Asian enough for Asia. You're just like, who am I? What am I? Am I good enough?
Yeah.
My sister committed suicide when I was 17 and she was 13. And actually, that was a surprise to me. I was really drunk when I came out.
Hi, this is Lauren Engel of Sidewalk Talk. Today I'm here with AKANA.
Hi!
So you're originally born in California, or?
Yeah, my dad's military, so I moved around every 2 to 3 years, but I've been in LA now for 8 years.
Where in California originally?
Monterey?
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. And then what does your mom do?
My mom's a homemaker, so she stayed at
Oh.
home and she raised 3 kids, probably the harder of both jobs.
And where did you move when you were growing up?
I was in North Carolina, Japan, Hawaii, Virginia, all over the place.
And your mom's originally from?
The Philippines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then how did they meet?
My dad was stationed in the Philippines. He was a Marine Corps officer.
Yeah.
And she was a waitress. And they had like a little meet cute and started dating.
Are you still really connected to your family in the Philippines?
Yeah, we have a huge family. My dad has 7 brothers and sisters, and so does my mom. My mom has 7 brothers, so it's a huge family. It's kind of hard because everyone's scattered all over the planet, but we have reunions every once in a while.
And how often do you go back there?
Not often. I've only been
I feel like I've been back more.
Yeah.
My mom
Yeah.
grew up, well, like I'm from Hong Kong, but then my mom grew up in the Philippines, so then I used to go back like 3 times or something.
Oh my
gosh.
You get it.
Yeah. And how big was the like Filipino culture in your upbringing?
Huge. I mean, my
Yeah.
mom was like, it's oddly enough, like food-wise, all Filipino food, but like language, my mom didn't want us to learn Tagalog.
Yeah.
She thought it was like the poor man's language, so we learned Japanese instead.
Oh, okay. So I also asked this for a lot of people who I've interviewed who are like mixed race, and me too. Did you ever have any like identity issues growing up?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So many identity issues.
Yeah.
You're like not American enough for America. You're not Asian enough for Asia. You're just like, who am I? What am I? Am I good enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how were you able to like overcome, or like what were the obstacles you
man.
had back then?
I don't know. I felt like I had this weird, unique experience where I didn't know I was Asian until I was like much older. And then I lived in predominantly Asian countries till I was a teenager. And
Yeah.
I came here and I experienced racism for the first time. So that was like a weird culture shock to me.
Yeah.
Like my first day at high school in Temecula, California, this guy was like, go back to China, you chink. And I wasn't even offended. I was like, oh, I'm Japanese, you
Yeah.
silly boy. You can't even tell the difference. You're an
Yeah.
idiot.
And did your parents like teach you anything, or
About racism? No, not
or
really.
about like when people say stuff like that to you?
No, I found it really amusing at first, and then
Yeah.
once I found out it was like a systematic thing in the States that could actually affect your career, I was like, oh shit. And that's when I sort of had to really deal with racism.
And having like a Filipino background, were you always into like karaoke and like singing with your
Oh,
family?
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a musician now,
Yeah,
so you know,
exactly.
it's like karaoke, but you don't
Yeah.
have to share.
Your parents sing?
But they try. They try.
What kind of music were you into, or what kind of music were they playing in the house back in the day?
They were playing Celine Dion, the
Oh,
Carpenters, Paul Anka, Beatles, so I grew up on their tastes 100%.
And what kind of, do you remember like the first CD you bought?
The first CD I bought was Britney Spears. Yeah.
Yeah. And were you
Britney-
already singing like back in the day?
I wasn't very good when I started out. I didn't really understand how to use my instrument, and but I like loved the Spice Girls, obviously, and I think
Yeah.
everyone my age when we were growing up, we all wanted to be a pop star. So yeah.
Did you do instruments?
Yeah, I play piano, and then I'm very mediocre at guitar, but I play guitar as well.
Did you take, well, how old were you when you started those instruments?
Piano I started as like a little girl, so maybe like 7, and guitar I picked up in my teenage years.
And then you were doing a lot of lessons, like did your
Oh,
parents
yeah.
push you so hard
The
to do it?
Asian lessons,
Yeah.
yeah, they're like, you're gonna be in piano, but I had a Japanese teacher, and I couldn't really understand what she was saying because I didn't have the language at the time, so it was very confusing, so I learned mostly by memorization as a young kid.
How would you describe yourself back then growing up?
Oh man, obnoxious. I was so obnoxious.
Really?
Yeah, it was
Why?
so annoying. I don't know, I was just like not self-aware of like social cues, and like just really loud and like attention seeking. I think most of us who end up in entertainment, you like you channel all of that annoyingness into like your art, and that's how you get your fill of that, so you can chill out in real life.
But you have, but then, were you like a middle child or oldest child?
I'm the oldest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was kind of like the perfect child, you know, the responsible one.
Which of your parents were you more similar to?
I'm definitely more like my dad. So my mom is very like life of the party, really funny, really extroverted. My dad's more introverted and like disciplined and organized, and I definitely feel like I identify more with my dad, but I can take on my mom's persona when like I really need to.
Yeah. Were you into school growing up?
Oh yeah, I loved school. I thought I was going to be a vet.
Yeah, see, I mean, you usually did really well in school then?
Yeah.
Did your parents push you or just kind of?
Oh, yeah. They were like such Asian tiger parents, so it was like, get good grades, become a doctor, blah!
Yeah, but why being a vet? Like, was that something that...
I just loved cats. Yeah, I loved animals so much, and I always thought I was going to go into the military and become a veterinarian and help animals out through the military, and so that was my goal for like 19 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I guess your parents were really supportive of that. It just sounds like,
yeah,
we have the connections, like, you have the grades, like, let's do it.
Exactly. They were like so on board.
Yeah. What were your favorite subjects in school?
I loved English. I loved writing essays. I loved reading. I would often take tests for people if they paid me as a kid.
No way, they were already doing that back then.
Yeah, it was like a little side hustle of mine to make money.
Did your parents know?
No, they did not. They would not have approved.
Wow, that's crazy. And what were you doing in your free time back then when you were growing up?
I was drawing a lot. I loved drawing. I would make songs. I would put on pretend plays. I would write. I really loved just exploring different art forms as a kid. 'Cause, you know, you get bored and we didn't have phones back then. So you're like, I'm just going to try a bunch of stuff.
What happened after you finished high school?
I did like 2 semesters of community college, dropped out, and then pursued stand-up comedy.
Yeah. What were your parents' reaction when you wanted to drop out?
They did not approve, but they saw me do stand-up and then they were like, oh, okay, we get it.
What was did you just stop liking, like, did you realize that, was it a crazy turning point that you realized you didn't want to be a vet anymore?
Yeah.
You had that in your mind for like 19 years, so it's like a hard thing to suddenly give up.
Yeah, I mean, my sister committed suicide when I was 17 and she was 13, and that was kind of when I realized, I am gonna die, and what do I want my life to actually be? And so from that moment forward, I was like, I've always wanted to be in entertainment, but that never seemed like a real possibility, and so that's what I sort of went toward.
How did you decide on stand-up? I feel like it's like pretty specific compared to like acting in general.
Well, I saw Margaret Cho perform.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I laughed in like 2 years, and like I forgot my sister was dead for like a second, and I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful gift to give someone, you know, like to let them escape their pain for a little while, and so I wanted to pay that forward and give it to others.
Were you always watching like comedic films back in the day?
Oh yeah, I loved comedy. Yeah.
What were your favorite films back then?
Oh man, I mean, actually, a lot of my favorite films were more like action-y. Like I loved Kill Bill. I loved the Goofy movie, although that's not very actiony. I guess it's comedic. You know, I loved all the Disney stuff, so I was like really into like classic Disney stuff. All the Quentin Tarantino films, even though my parents surprisingly let me watch all that really mature stuff when I was growing up.
Yeah, I rewatched the stuff. I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Your parents let you, Asian parents let you.
Yeah.
And how were you able to like hold your family together like through your sister's passing?
Well, we sort of came together as a family and did group therapy. We all sort of grieved on our own, and then when I started pursuing the arts is when we really were like, oh, okay, this is a way for us to talk about trauma in a way that is also funny.
Yeah. What kind of advice do you have for someone who's dealing with like a sibling or a close one passing?
Oh man, get into therapy. I think therapy was instrumental in me coping with my grief, and like, you don't realize it, but when you lose someone, everyone develops coping mechanisms in different ways, and they're usually unhealthy. We're not taught how to have healthy coping mechanisms for death. And so I would say, like, I would self-sabotage a lot. I would make really toxic decisions because I didn't feel like I deserved to be happy. There was a lot of survivor's guilt that I had to deal with, and it was through therapy I was able to realize the ways in which I was like ruining my life because I didn't feel like I deserved to, you know, have fun or be happy or live.
Yeah. Were your parents aware when you were turning to alcohol or partying?
Not really. Not really at all, no.
So I guess it was just like through yourself that you were able to like, when you were going through that phase and through therapy that you were able to figure out, and how much of, what's that word? What was the role they played when you were grieving?
My parents?
Yeah.
I mean, we're an Asian family, so we're pretty separate in terms of like keeping our feelings to ourselves, and so we all kind of grieved on our own, you know?
What was the turning point were you always doing music through when you were doing YouTube, or how was it like?
I did comedy music for a long, long time as a way to deal with stuff and like make funny, jokey songs.
Yeah.
So I was always writing serious music, but I never shared it.
And what was what kind of topics were they about?
Usually like heartbreak, or at least the serious ones were usually about heartbreak or the toxic relationships I was in. The funny stuff is, you know, about a friend who flakes on you all the time, or the one that got away, and it's about a guy I had in my basement who got away. So silly stuff like that.
Were you taking singing lessons through it, or?
I actually started taking singing lessons about 6 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, so like a weekly thing, or?
Yeah.
No wonder, I was like, you kept up your voice like since then. So was there something like urging you that you wanted to release more of like a full song since that time, or what was the turning point that you realized like now was the time?
Well, I love comedy. It served me well in like the 10 years I did it, but I started to get to a point where I realized like comedy is an escape, and I'm becoming, you know, a full-grown woman. I don't want to escape anymore. I want to put art out into the world that like helps people, and like I've had so much art in my life help me feel less alone and help me feel seen. And with music, I was particularly inspired to start releasing serious stuff because a boyfriend of mine was like, "This is good, you know, you should make an album, you should pursue this. You're doing it, but like you seem too scared to ever put anything out there." And I was really emboldened by his advice, and the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, music has had such a special place in my life, and I would love to give someone else the kind of comfort that I've received from that medium.
Well, other than him, was there like a different change in mindset, or was it really because of him that you
No, I mean, I'd been contemplating quitting comedy for some time, but I didn't want to give up live performance.
Yeah.
And so I think when he really encouraged me to do music, I was like, oh yeah, like I can perform music live and I can say goodbye to comedy, and it just felt like a very natural transition, and he gave me a little nudge.
And how did you meet your producers or people that you make music with?
I actually met them through a friend of mine. So my ex-vocal teacher started dating my ex.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I can't learn voice from you anymore. So I asked some friends for some recommendations, and they introduced me to Jenga Productions, which makes up Nietzsche Funicelli, Jim Funicelli, and Cheyenne Daniels. And in learning with them, I became very close friends with them, and I found out they produced music as well, so we started doing that together. And so I've been working with them for like 2 years.
And was it difficult going from like writing your more comedic music to writing more serious music?
Serious music felt a little easier. With comedic music, everything's set up punch, like you have to make people laugh a lot, so yeah.
How about working in sessions with producers, or is that something that you're really used to at this point?
I think I'm used to it at this point, at least with mine. You know, you do writing sessions with a variety of producers, but I don't know, I find it to be a very joyous and fun process.
Yeah. Was it difficult for you to be vulnerable in those sessions?
At first, yes.
Yeah.
But I think you slowly get accustomed to it, and then, you know, you get the rewards of vulnerability.
I guess going from YouTube to music, you didn't want to be like stereotyped into like that YouTube to music like crossover, or was that something that didn't cross your mind at all?
I mean, that's something that we've tried to be conscious of, because a lot of YouTube people are trying to transition into music or acting, or, you know, everyone who does both, and for some weird reason there's a stigma against it, even though YouTube is just a platform. And what I've done on YouTube is vastly different. It's mostly mental health advocacy and comedy. But I mean, it's something to be mindful of, but at the same time, an artist is an artist, you know? People are multifaceted and want to do different things, and I think a stigma is just a way to keep people in a box and like tear people down.
Have you felt like there are some people in the industry who are more hesitant because you were mostly from YouTube, or you haven't faced it?
I mean, I faced that as an actor, I faced that as a musician. There's just a stigma that people have that you aren't as legitimate if you come from YouTube. So it's annoying, but it happens.
And how about, do you have a separate team for music, or how does that work?
I have a Red Light Management for music, and then I have CAA and the Cornell Group for all my film and acting.
How did you meet Red Light?
Actually, I met them through a music strategist named Mary Gormley, who runs Connect the Dots, and she'd sort of reached out to various people, and I met Jordan from Red Light and Stephanie and Tamara, and we all just very much clicked.
What were the main topics for intervention that you wanted to bring to light?
Well, I struggled with alcohol abuse when I was like in my early 20s, and I sort of got a hold of it, and then it got a hold of me again in my late 20s. So it was sort of like I promised to myself to get things back in order, and I wanted an empowering song about, owning your own shit and being self-aware.
And what was the inspirations for the music video?
The inspiration for the music video actually was Donald Glover's show Atlanta, season 2, the teaser. We'd seen it and we loved that device as a way to kind of showcase someone who's stumbling through life when they're drunk.
And how about like all the cuts and everything? I feel like it's so specific for, I just love the cuts so much.
Thank you. Yeah, my director Autumn Bowie was really intentional about how she wanted to match cut stuff. We'd done a short together called When I Wanted to Die earlier that year, in which I was very intentional about the match cuts, and she loved how that came out. And so to honor sort of that style and to stay in line with my brand, we were like, okay, this is a great thing to carry over because they're both very serious topics.
And what are they the same themes and inspirations for your upcoming album?
The overarching theme for the album is just overcoming various kinds of heartbreak. So there's songs about domestic abuse, there's songs about suicide ideation, but everything is about just sort of overcoming.
Are you done with it now?
Oh, it's totally done.
Yeah.
I have 13 music videos. Well, 2 have been released so far. Yeah. So the remaining 11 are going to be released slowly throughout the year.
Actually, what's the idea for doing, I guess there's a music video for every song, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty uncommon, so what made you want to do that?
Well, I have a filmmaker background, so most of my audience knows me for a visual medium, and visual mediums are what I've honed my craft in for like 12 years. And so I'm new to music in terms of like releasing serious music, but I was like, my strengths lie in visual and my audience mainly lies in that sort of platform. So the smartest thing it felt like to do was to create a visual album so that people who can see my visual content also become audio listeners. And also it was just like a really fun artistic project to do.
How were you able to think of the music videos for all of them? Is there like a storyline throughout? Or?
There isn't a storyline throughout. I initially wanted to do that, but it felt a little difficult to force that narrative on all of them. So instead, I took them piecemeal. I was like, you know what, the overarching themes sort of connect together, but I think each music video should have its own visual piece that fits it best.
Is the style kind of all the same, or?
No, it differs. There are different directors for each one, so they've sort of blended their style. Autumn Bowie directed the majority of the visual album, so in terms of like the cinematography, it's very similar throughout.
For the style of music, do you have specific inspirations, like other artists?
Yeah, I like to describe myself as Taylor Swift meets K-Flay.
Okay, yeah. That's cool. What was the turning point that you realized that you wanted to come out?
Actually, that was a surprise to me. I was really drunk when I came out.
So I guess sometimes it could be good.
I wasn't intending to, but I don't know, I think my drunk mind was just like, really in awe of all these influencers speaking up about people needing to go vote because of the state of our country. And I also wanted to contribute to that conversation in a meaningful way. And before I knew it, I was like, I want queer, I want that. And I was like, oh, there we go.
Were you so shocked when that happened, or you're like, it's about time anyway?
It's so funny because I was having a conversation with my friend the week of, and I was like, yeah, I'm bisexual, but I'm probably never gonna come out. And then literally immediately come out.
What was the decision that you didn't want to come out before?
I didn't feel like I'm not bisexuality to me, I always thought you had to be 50-50, And I'd never dated women, I'd never been with women sexually, and so I felt like it was sort of unfair for me to come out in that regard. And until I talked to some bisexual friends who are like, no, it doesn't have to be 50-50. You could be 10-90. You could be 95-5. All forms of bisexuality are valid. And then I was like, oh, okay. And it took me a long time to even just own the label because I felt so, I don't know, I had a lot of internalized homophobia myself.
From, I guess, from your Asian background, or what was it from?
Just from society, things that you don't even think about, subconsciously sinking into your psyche as a young adult.
At what age did you realize that you were bi?
Probably 11.
Oh, okay.
I told a friend I was kind of into this girl, and she told me I was just trying to be interesting. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. I guess I'm just seeking attention.
Was this still when you were in Asia, or?
No, that was when I was it when I was in Asia? Yes, actually, yeah. I was at like a little
Oh.
camp there.
So maybe that's why I didn't go over too well.
Yeah, she was just like, no.
How about for your parents? Did they know all along, or?
No, they weren't surprised by any means, but they definitely didn't know.
So did they also find out from the awards, or?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
What was the reaction? Do you know?
They were really supportive,
Yeah.
actually. They were super awesome about it.
How would you say you've grown as a person compared to when you were younger?
Oh man, so much. I've just become so much more aware of like why I am the way I am and how I can be a much more compassionate human being. I guess I've just matured a lot emotionally. I've learned how to cope with feelings. I've learned how to make space for others to have different opinions without feeling so much emotional reactivity to it. Values have grown stronger. Yeah.
What does love mean to you?
Love? I think it's giving space for another person to be them and not needing anything from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question. What do you want to be remembered for?
Ooh, God, that's a good one. I want to be remembered for being someone who inspired others to find their best selves and to embody their best selves. Like, I truly believe my best friend gave me this bracelet, and it says inspire in Morse code, and she was
Oh,
like,
wow.
because you inspire others, and it means so much to me because I was like, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I would love to just be an inspiration to other people, to either do better or be better or like help others. Like, that's such a meaningful thing. I've been inspired all the time by so many different artists, and it's so energizing and it makes you feel so
Yeah.
alive to be inspired. So if I can give that to someone else, that's pretty rad.
I love that. This is awesome.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.